and thank you for joining us again at Voice of Rohingya Radio. We are a registered nonprofit coming to you from the state of Oregon in the United States of America. I would like to take some time to thank all of our listeners who allow this program to continue providing the latest news through our exclusive interviews, reports from inside the border, and reputable sources from around the world. If you would like to stay up to date with our program, you can find our weekly broadcasts every Sunday night at 6 p.m. Pacific online at youtube.com/VOR Radio, or you can join our page on Facebook to find more information on our activities and past programs. It is November 30th, 2014. For Voice of Rohingya Radio, I'm your host, Zach Taylor. The United Nations Third Committee concluded its 69th session Wednesday with important resolutions on Syria, Iran, Burma, South Korea, death penalty, freedom of religion or belief, privacy, and women's rights. Foreign Office Minister Baroness Annalay spoke on Myanmar, welcoming the resolution on the human rights situation in the country, which was again agreed by consensus at the UN General Assembly. Annalay said the international community has again demonstrated its shared commitment to promoting and protecting the human rights of the Burmese people. She also welcomed the constructive engagement of the Burmese government in the negotiation process. The year ahead promises to be a pivotal one in Burma's transition. The resolution rightly identifies the progress made by the Burmese government, but clearly sets out those areas where improvements to human rights and freedoms are needed if that transition is ultimately to be judged successful. In particular, in this critical year, she concluded, the Burmese government must ensure credible and inclusive elections, release all remaining political prisoners, and take action to address the situation in Rakhine State. The Burmese Rohingya organization UK today welcomed the introduction of a similar resolution in the US Senate, condemning all forms of persecution and discrimination against the Muslim Rohingya ethnic group from Burma. BROUK expressed many thanks to US Senator Menendez and Senator Mark Kirk for introducing this resolution. The U.S. Senate resolution says the Burmese government continues to refuse to recognize the Rohingya in breach of international law, and that the government has stated that there has been no such ethnic group as Rohingya among the ethnic groups of Burma. By continuing to persecute the Rohingya minority in Burma and by refusing to afford basic rights to the Rohingya community, the Burmese government has demonstrated a refusal to adhere to international norms, the resolution explains. It also said the rejection of Rohingya citizenship rights and ethnic rights by the government of Thein Sein is the main contributing factor to the growth of the refugee problem and the boat people crisis in the region. In other news, Myanmar's military turned down a dinner invitation from opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi, lawmakers said on Thursday, after the Nobel laureate sought a meeting to build ties ahead of a proposed summit on changing the constitution. Suu Kyi is barred from becoming president under the existing constitution, which cannot be changed without the support of at least one military lawmaker. The military holds 25% of the seats in parliament, an effective veto over constitutional amendments which need more than 75% support from lawmakers. The meeting would have been the first between Suu Kyi and military parliamentarians. Public debate on the constitution has come to the fore around the visit of President Barack Obama to Myanmar earlier this month. Obama said it made little sense for the Constitution to bar Suu Kyi from becoming president. The Speaker of Parliament, Shwe Mon, said last week that the Constitution could not be changed before a general election in 2015. On Tuesday, Parliament unanimously endorsed talks among Suu Kyi, President Thein Sein, the speakers of the two houses of Parliament, Military Chief Min Aung Hlaing, and a member of a party representing an ethnic minority. Suu Kyi has endorsed reforms by the semi-civilian government of former General Thein Sein. She was famously pictured watching a military parade in Naypyidaw last year, alongside members of the previous junta that had kept her under house arrest for more than 15 years. But over the past year, Suu Kyi has been critical of the government, accusing it of stalling the reform process. Her party has gathered about 5 million signatures in support of a petition to amend the military-drafted constitution. No date has yet been set for the proposed constitutional talks. You are listening to Voice of Rohingya Radio. Thanks again for listening to Voice of Rohingya Radio, a registered non-profit out of Oregon in the United States of America, bringing you up-to-date news on the Rohingya people of Myanmar. I'm your host, Zach Taylor. Holders of temporary identification documents in Myanmar, better known as white cards, are likely to be barred from voting in a national referendum on constitutional change proposed for May of next year. The national referendum bill submitted by the Union Solidarity and Development Party on November 20th had given white card holders the right to vote. However, MPs agreed unanimously to cut reference to them from the bill. No objections were tabled, but the change could still be rejected. If approved, the change will most likely affect Muslims in Rakhine State, where an estimated 1 million people hold white cards. Leaders of the Rohingya Muslim community say that many would be eligible for citizenship, but the government has refused to consider their applications for decades. White card holders were able to vote in both the 2010 general elections and 2012 by-elections, but appear likely to be stripped of voting rights for next year's election. In late September, President Thein Sein enacted an amendment to the political parties registration law that banned white card holders from being members of political parties. The amendment was submitted by the Rakhine National Party, which has also put forward amendments to election laws that would stop white card holders from voting. Tuesday marked International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and an opportunity to recognize that rape at the hands of military continues to decimate the lives of women across Myanmar. For more than 15 years, the Women's League of Burma has been working with women from ethnic communities to document these crimes. Survivors who dare to speak out face harassment and intimidation, as do human rights defenders working with them to seek justice. The consequences of gender inequality in Myanmar are all too real for women across the country, with state-sponsored gang rape and systematic denial of justice, and marginalization in political and public life. Survivors and local-level authorities know all too well that when a case is brought against a member of the military, the chances of obtaining justice are very slim. For women seeking justice through channels available at the local level, the intransigence of state authorities often dissuades them from attempting to hold perpetrators accountable. The absence of transparency and accountability has created a culture of fear for both survivors and state-sponsored sexual violence and the human rights defenders who work with them for justice. The military and government have done nothing to shatter this culture of silence in these recent years of reform. The Women's League of Burma's members organizations say they have seen no action from the government to make good on their promises, and this means, though many women work to effect positive change, local civil society remains fraught with security risks. Whatever change might be taking place at the central level, it's not altering the decades-long patterns of human rights abuses and denial of justice for women in Myanmar's ethnic communities. Along with their new report on sexual abuse in the country, the Women's League of Burma says substantive change for the women of Myanmar, whose suffering at the hands of state-sponsored sexual violence has been ignored for too long, must be demanded immediately. In other news, Director General for the Arakan Rohingya Union, Dr. Waqar Uddin, was received by the United Arab Emirates Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Anwar bin Mohammed Gargash, on Tuesday. Uddin had the audience of Anwar to discuss the latest developments on the ground in Myanmar concerning the Rohingya. Dr. Gargash has also chaired the UAE National Committee to Combat Human Trafficking since 2007. Finally tonight, Myanmar officials are blaming the Rohingya Solidarity Organization for recent attacks in Myanmar and believe it could foment more violence. Most experts believe the RSO barely exists, with some saying it's being used to further oppress the Rohingya. Myanmar officials blame the RSO for a series of deadly incursions in northern Rakhine State, including an attack on May 17th that killed 4 members of the Myanmar's border guard police. For Buddhist officials, the RSO is posing an existential threat. Statewide, Rakhine Buddhists outnumber the Rohingya Muslims by 2-1, but only 6% of Maungda's 500,000 people are Rakhine or non-Muslim. The head of Maungda Township, Ki San, fears RSO agents could radicalize this large Muslim community. They take recruits back to Bangladesh for training, he said. They have cells in all the villages. The perceived threat extends beyond Rakhine State. A roadside wanted poster near the capital Naypyidaw in central Myanmar features 4 RSO suspects, one of them labeled an explosive specialist. The poster didn't say what they were wanted for, and Myanmar's special branch, when contacted by Reuters news agency, declined to elaborate for reasons of what they called national security. Bertil Linter, a journalist and author who has covered Myanmar for 30 years, says Rohingya militancy is a myth. The RSO once had a small camp in the Bangladeshi region of Ukiah, which borders Maungdaw district, but never had a presence in Myanmar. Many of those who trained at Ukiah were not Rohingya, but youths from other Bangladeshi militant outfits, he said. The RSO faded as the Bangladesh government cracked down on Islamist groups. Today, it hardly exists, he said. Even though the RSO poses no real military threat, it provides a pretext to, quote, squeeze and oppress Rohingya communities, said Matthew Smith of Fortify Rights, a Bangkok-based group. The authorities are conducting violent spot checks and accusing villagers of involvement with RSO, dragging men off and forcing others to flee, said Smith. This has increased in recent months. Maungda chief Ki San denied the authorities were oppressing Muslims, saying, "We have a duty to protect what he called the weaker Rakhine community." Thanks again for listening to Voice of Rohingya Radio, a weekly news program bringing you up-to-date information about the Rohingya people in Myanmar. You can catch our broadcasts every Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time here in the United States at youtube.com/VOR Radio, or you can join our page on Facebook to find more information on the program. For Voice of Rohingya Radio, this is Zach Taylor, signing out.